Lyotard's work, The Postmodern Condition, a report on knowledge, is an important book that attempts to answer big questions about how we know things in the modern world. It was published in 1979 and quickly became one of the key texts in postmodern theory. Lyotard was a French philosopher and literary theorist who spent much of his life thinking about how knowledge, science, art, and society are connected. In this book, he explores how the way we understand and share knowledge has changed in what he calls the postmodern era. He is especially interested in how technology, science, and politics shape what we consider to be true or real. Lyotard begins the book by explaining how knowledge worked in the past. He says that in earlier times, scholars used a long and deep kind of storytelling to explain and expand knowledge. These were called meta-narratives, big overall stories or systems that explained everything. For example, the idea that science leads to truth, or that history moves forward toward progress, are examples of meta-narratives. These big stories helped people agree on what counts as real knowledge. Scientists and thinkers would argue and discuss things, but they all believed in the same system or method for finding the truth. This made it for people to build on each other's ideas and keep expanding knowledge. However, Lyotard says this system has changed. In the postmodern world, those big stories no longer seem believable. People have lost faith in grand explanations. Instead of long debates and shared ideas, knowledge is now split into many smaller stories, each with its own rules. More importantly, knowledge today is often judged not by whether it is true, but by whether it is useful or profitable. In modern societies, especially those that rely on computers and digital technology, knowledge has become a kind of product. It gets packaged and used just like any other good in the economy. This is sometimes called the knowledge economy. In this new system, information has to be small, quick, and easy to share. It has to be performative, which means it needs to work efficiently and give results. For example, businesses do not care if a piece of information is deep or thoughtful. They care about whether it can help them make money or solve problem. This changes how knowledge is created and who gets to decide what counts as knowledge. Lyotard is worried about this. He asks who is in charge of the system and who gets to decide what knowledge is important. He worries that and big businesses now control the flow of information, which can make knowledge more exclusive and unequal. He talks about how language also changes in the postmodern era. He uses the term language games, a concept borrowed from philosopher Wittgenstein. The idea is that every kind of communication, whether it is reading, talking, texting, or teaching, has its own rules. We act differently depending on how we are communicating. This means that how we share knowledge also changes depending on the context. Reading a book is different from talking on the phone, and both are different from using social media. Each form of communication shapes what we know and how we understand it. Lyotard also looks at how knowledge is tied to society. In the modern era, knowledge and society were part of a big machine that was supposed to lead to progress. People believed that science and education would make the world better. But Lyotard argues that this model did not work for everyone. It was often elitist, meaning it only benefited the educated or the powerful. In the postmodern world, the bond between knowledge and society looks different. There is no longer one path toward progress. There are many small paths, each with its own rules and values. This can be freeing, but it can also be confusing and chaotic. Lyotard makes a difference between two kinds of knowledge: narrative knowledge and scientific knowledge. Narrative knowledge is the kind we pass through stories, culture, and tradition. It is flexible and shaped by everyday experience. Scientific knowledge is more formal and based on rules and experiments. Scientists try to test ideas and repeat results. But even scientific knowledge depends on a kind of story. Scientists still have to explain their findings in ways that other people can understand. Both kinds of knowledge are shaped by language and culture, and neither one can claim to be the ultimate truth. One of the important points in the book is that in a postmodern world, people can choose to reject certain types of knowledge. Because we have access to so many different sources of information, like books, television, internet, we can decide what to believe and what to ignore. This makes the process of legitimizing knowledge more democratic but also more stable. There is no longer one agreed upon system for what counts as real or valid. This leads to what Lyotard calls delegitimation, the loss of trust in big, universal systems of truth. Instead, knowledge becomes more local, more personal, and more fragmented. He explores how this change affects research, education, and science. He says that research is often shaped by performance. In other words, scientists and scholars are judged by how quickly they can produce results, win funding, or publish papers. This pressure can harm the true spirit of inquiry. It can also make knowledge less trustworthy, since the goal becomes speed and profit rather than understanding. The same thing happens in education. Learning is no longer something we do just in school or university. In a fast changing world, people have to keep learning all the time just to keep up. Knowledge is now a lifelong process tied closely to jobs and technology. In the last part of the book, Lyotard talks about something he calls paralogy. This means going beyond the usual rules of logic to explore new and unexpected ideas. He thinks this could be a good way to understand postmodern knowledge. Instead of trying to force everything into one system or one truth, we should accept that knowledge is always changing. We should be open to different viewpoints, different cultures, and different ways of thinking. This means embracing uncertainty and letting go of the need for total control or complete answers.